Hey, look at that. We're live.
Maybe you say.
Allegedly. I guess I should preface that. Allegedly.
It wouldn't be the
Allegedly.
first time we went live. Not really.
And or thought were live and weren't
Yeah.
weren't
Hey, nice
actually
glass.
live. You like
Nice
that?
glass, Appa.
Like
I do.
it was recommended. Yours seems much bigger though.
Well,
Or unless you have little itty bitty baby hands, is that you have little itty bitty baby hands? Is that what that is?
no, I think I think there's two sizes. And we got different sizes. They're good glasses, though. Does yours have
Yeah,
the?
yours is shoot. Now I'm upset. I got the baby glass.
Does yours have the? And it's a different shape too. But does yours have the grating in the bottom of it?
Yeah.
For, like pressing in the oranges and stuff.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm just
Well,
really
good to see you,
upset that
buddy.
I have the little shot glass. Cheers to you, sir. What are you drinking, by the way?
Jefferson's Reserve tonight
Nice. I got a little
with one of the big old spheres of ice.
See, I need to get cool like you and do the sphere thing. I'm having some
Until
red
it
rust
pops
rust out.
when you're trying to it explodes.
Yeah.
When you're trying to drink it.
Is it silicone? Is that how you make it?
Yeah.
It's like a silicone mold?
Yep.
You don't have like a spot on your counter with a chisel where you're like making these
No, I'm
cool
not that
ice
good.
balls?
I've seen those people doing that. And I'm not that. I'm not that person. I'm nowhere near that fancy. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, dude. I'm super excited to be doing this again, you know?
I am too. I am too. Happy New Year in February.
Right? Look, man. You can have good product or you can have a timely product, all right?
Yeah, yeah. We're going with good. We'll go with, sure, that's what we're doing. We'll go
I
with
mean,
good.
at least that's what I'm hoping. It's
Yeah, the last one of these we did was August,
yeah, it
and
blows
we
me
didn't
away.
realize that. Yeah, we didn't realize that until a moment ago when we were looking at the old recordings, and
Yeah, man.
it really kind of puts in focus how crazy our lives have been between then and now. And we won't go into tons of details about all that stuff, but suffice
Yeah,
to
man.
say, I'm glad to be back, glad to be hanging out. Appreciate you being patient with me, and I certainly had patience with you. And we went, we got here from August, and hopefully now we're going to be looking at a much greater frequency.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I had said it publicly before. I think a good goal is like bi-weekly or every other week if we can. But I mean, that was one thing I tried to tell. Seven and I had talked about it a while ago, obviously a long time ago. That, that IRL, real life stuff is always going to be more important than this. Like it is and was very important to me that content creation and this podcast, case in point, are like a food of love. Like I don't want it to be work, and I don't want he and I both were like, I think we were a little bit more serious when we were talking about it before than maybe we needed to be, because you're like, oh, tell me a time, I'll put you on the calendar, we will do it, blah blah blah. And I was like, that's all good. Like I'm not saying I wouldn't mind that, but at the same time, I don't want to put us in a situation where like, no, I can't go to the kids' baseball game because I have the podcast, kind of thing.
Yep.
Like I ain't
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
do all
we,
that. So
We were trying, like, we were pretty aggressive, at least in our thoughts, right? We were planning it.
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
being pretty aggressive about it. And then I think that, I mean, obviously life happens, right? But we were trying to say, I was working 14-hour days. I was traveling a lot at the time. And so it was going to be hard for me anyway. And you're right. Like, you
Right.
hit me up and I would be like, well, I could fit you in on the calendar in this one slot. And it kind of really quickly got, crazy. And we're going to get to some of this a little
Right.
bit later. But like it was, not as conducive, and maybe now it'll be more conducive, plus more relaxing. It's just fun, right? We were hanging out last night,
Yeah, exactly.
kind of late, and we were talking, and it was like, this is what it should be. It's just fun, hanging out, and it shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to force it, right? And I would
Right.
love to get to the point where you and I agree that we should have to force it because it's making, it's making change in the world, or it's doing something that we want it to do. That's
Right.
That's
When we make
worth
when
forcing
we
it.
get a Rogan big.
yeah. Yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna get a call from Spotify, and I'm gonna be like,
Telling you, look, man, we know we have millions of listeners out there that are just egging to hear the next episode, but sometimes life just takes over.
Tens and tens and tens.
Tens and tens. Maybe not that many tens, but
We have 10 of listeners.
at least tens and tens. At least. I don't know about the third tens, but we'll see.
We'll work on that one this time. So we'll have a better frequency. So we're gonna do. We got a pretty good. I think we got a pretty good list of subjects lined up tonight. I'm kind of excited to go through some of these things. Full disclosure to anyone who is listening, anyone who's watching live on YouTube. You know, if you're catching this podcast later, just know that we do stream these live on YouTube. If you ever want to catch one live, you can follow either one of us on Twitter. Just use our names. You can find us on Twitter, our Discord servers. But we do these live, but we do them so we can record them. And we got a pretty good list of stuff lined up to talk about. It is some New Year's stuff. It is some stuff that's very timely, and it's some stuff we've talked about every freaking podcast we've done. So we've got some cool stuff. I'm excited to get into it. But we always start with kind of the same thing. So we start with who we are. If we do this often enough, we won't have to do this every time, right? But we're going to start with like who we are and tell us a little bit about, you know, tell everyone a little bit about ourselves. So Hapa, what makes a Hapa fodder a Hapa fodder?
And not haven't figured that one out yet.
Right? Which
not a HEPA filter.
Not a HEPA filter. What makes a HEPA a HEPA?
What would a HEPA filter would anyway? No, I'm retired sailor, U.S. Navy sailor. I'd like to say I've got, 20, well, now we're going on 25, 26 years of professional life experience out there and world experience, and just somebody that I made the decision a few years ago that I was not going to push myself through corporate America. I'm sure everybody has seen the clippets or whatever out there on social media, which we'll talk about later at some point, where they talk about how, working age is still 60, or what is it, 67 now? I don't even know what retirement age is now.
They're trying to push it higher, yeah.
Yeah, and the average lifespan is like 80 or something like that, so we're meant to work for however many years to enjoy 13 years of life, and I'm a big lover of life, and we'll kind of go into that more when some of the subjects we're talking about are perfect for that question, but I just found that I was focusing not enough on real life stuff, life in general, experiencing life, because of a lot of serious stuff that I've had happen in my life, and I just wanted to kind of take a step back and relax a little bit, and I think that's content creation has been an amazing outlet for that, because I've been just able to relax and enjoy life, really. I mean, but I've kind of got a little bit of gray in me and a little life experience, and now I'm just saying.
You have to earn the gray.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is necessarily earned as forced, if I'm being honest with you.
You've earned it, man. You don't get gray hair without earning it. That's what something an old guy used to tell me. Is like, you earn every single gray hair you ever had. So be proud of them. That's a way easier for guys to do, right? Because it's not with guys. It's like, oh, it's distinguished, or it's wise, or whatever. So yeah, it's. I got a little more gray in my beard. I have hair this time, so anyone who's ever watched our podcasts or videos has seen.
That's how they know time's passed.
I did not stay in character. I was replaced with a new actor. But it's funny because my kids have never even seen me with hair, so like that's
serious?
A recent thing, but it's a lot. Oh yeah, like I haven't had hair for like 20 years.
And your kids are like in their teens.
Yeah. And so
that's crazy.
It was so I've got a lot more gray than I thought I was gonna have. But yeah, so with me, I'm 7. Hap and I met through playing some video games, honestly, and we met through what was primarily a business relationship first in that realm, and turned into a personal relationship. But I've been in the technology industry for a long time. I'm a tech executive. I was a very bad race car driver at one point. I was a semi-pro baseball player, and I'm into video games. Got a wife, 2 kids, couple of dogs, and we try to keep things as nice as possible in our lives, kind of like you were saying, right? We want to live a good life, and to us a good life is a happy life, and truly what it takes to be in that space is kind of what we're willing to do. We travel a good bit. The last year we went to San Francisco, Chicago, we went to New York, we went to Atlanta, we went to Nashville, we even went to Baton Rouge, hung out with Hapa a little bit. So we've been, those are the kind of things we want to do. My kids are 14 and 12, and they're at that age where I've only got 5 years left. with them for certain being around. I mean, heck, I hope it's 15 years, right? 20 years.
Yeah,
But
man. Yeah,
you
yeah.
definitely got 4 or 5 where they have to go. They have to go with me if I go somewhere. So
Totally.
that's what we've been into. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. So subject number one, Happa, we wanted to
Yeah.
talk about. And you threw this out there. We were looking at subjects. We were trying to figure out what are we going to put on the list. And we had some things that we kind of knew were going to be on the list, which we'll get to later. But I liked this one. This one was
Right.
the subject was, do you have a goal for this year? 2023 is here. It's February now, so January has already passed us, right? So we are 1/12 through the year, and the question is kind of nice. I mean, do you have a goal for this year that lived through January at least?
I mean, there's a reason I didn't put New Year's resolution on there because I don't. I mean, we're in February. That isn't the point. The biggest point for me is I don't believe in resolutions because everybody has the be a better me. You'll get to the gym more.
We have
blah,
that in
blah,
common,
blah.
man. I don't like that. Like I don't reserve setting goals for myself for the end of December.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so for me, and it's something I started doing honestly when I was nearing retirement from the Navy. I was like, I just want to set a attainable goal for myself for whatever the coming year may be. And my goal this year is very simple. Mostly based around the fact of why I retired from the Navy and where we are now with the pandemic and everything in between, is get to doing what I originally planned to do when I retired from the Navy, which is getting in the truck and hitting the road and getting out there and seeing more places. I have plans to try to head west, head northeast, head north, head east. Nothing necessarily crazy, but maybe go, head back to San Diego, or even if it's driving back to the Pacific Northwest to visit, my family and hitting sites on the way, or just get out there more. Because one of the things that I consciously tried to do when I retired from the Navy was, I've seen the world, haven't seen this country. So I kind of want to.
Not a lot of warships in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, so I kind of want to get out there and see stupid things like, the world's largest ball of twine or whatever the case may be out there. And not only that, but by nature of being in a gaming community, I have friends all over the country. And some of these friends, I've a really good friend of mine, I've known him. I'm not kidding you, and he's an EMT for Baltimore, city of Baltimore. I've known him for 16 years, and I mean, I know his kids and his family, like everything, and I've never met the dude, like literally, never, and I consider him a good friend, and it would be nice to get out there and actually, meet him face to face. And so, yeah, that's my goal. Is I want to get back on the road, if not every month, maybe once a quarter or something like that, and hit the road and go wherever.
That one. I like that one. That's a good one. I got it.
What about you?
That's a really good one. Yeah, for me, I and this kind of carries over from where I was, and you and I would talk in private about this back in November and October. I wanted to restructure my life in a way that gave me more free time. Right, it was more time to do the kind of things I want to do. Travel is something I've been able to make happen in the past. Simply because you schedule it. And this is back to what we were laughing about, but it was really true. Like, you had to get on my calendar to have any time. Yeah. And that was there comes a point in your life where that's probably got some diminishing returns to it.
Yeah.
And there's some industries and some things that require you to hustle at that level. I don't agree with the hustle culture and some of these things, but so my goal this year is to restructure my life around those kinds of things that I want to do that are more relaxing. And just more fun, and content creation is one of those, as an example. I started a new job in January, and thus far, 5 weeks in, right? But thus far, the all indications are what it was promised, right? Where it's the impact I can have in the position is huge. It's in fact bigger than the impact I could have had in the previous position. But the job itself is a far more conducive environment to me to be able to take care of me, and so I'm really excited about that. So when I talk about a goal, I kind of have to talk about, how do I know I'm being successful, right? So you said I'm going to go see things, and that's how you'll know you took the trip.
Yeah.
For me, it's going to be if I can get back on a schedule of content creation. And I think you would probably agree with me when we talk about this. Content creation is it's not easy, right? It is engaging
Mm-hmm.
enough and difficult enough that it is work. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do it well, it's going to be work. And to a degree, it's incredibly rewarding because of the work you did. But what people sometimes miss is just how nice it is to be part of the communities that you're engaged with, right? And
Totally.
that is something that you miss if it's not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I'm shooting for in 2023. Of course, I still have we're going to take a couple trips. We're going to go do some things. My wife and son have told me with in no uncertain terms that this time we will be going to a beach somewhere. So we've done a bunch of cities, right, which is kind of my thing. I'd love to go take them to mountains they've never been.
Sure.
I want to take my kids to a swamp. Most people have never been through a swamp, like an actual swamp.
How is that possible in the region that you live?
We got to go do it, right? And
Okay,
so
fair. Fair.
that's they've never done it,
Yeah.
and but they want a beach. So I know we'll do at least a
Sure.
beach this year. We'll do another couple cities. I think we're going to hit the West Coast again. I am going to try to get out to the town you're in, in the not too distant future and hang out.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, man, that's me for 2023. That's what I'm shooting to do. And
Do you I'm not to get details or anything, but do you think at some point before you did this job shift, do you think you were living more to work versus working to live, or were you
yeah,
working to live?
yeah, I was living to work, and it's one of those things that can be it can be sneaky, right? Because I'm very
Yeah.
cognizant of that, right? And I've done that before, and I'd stopped doing it. I'm not as young as I once was, and
Right.
and so I had been through that, right? I'd been through the world where that had occurred. I had suffered the consequences of that occurring, which are no free time, the mental health
Sure.
disadvantages, all these things that come with it. I had done that before, so I was aware of it,
Right.
and I knew it was happening. But
Sure.
in some roles, you're still powerless to stop it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really the being powerless to stop it that kind of drives the decision to end it, right? That's the way you
Yep.
end up having to stop it.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of what it was for me. But I was definitely living the work, and my wife, who's very understanding, you've met her, she's the nicest human being on earth. And she would tell me, like, "Hey, you're doing it again. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening." And you try to make adjustments, right? And then it's like,
Yeah.
look, the adjustments aren't, I'm not being
Yeah.
able to make the adjustments I want to make. Still working 14-hour days. I didn't have a weekend. I didn't have a holiday. And then you're just like, okay, I got to make a real change. So that stuff gets old.
I think that's phenomenal that you have. I mean, having a partner that can. I don't know if it's a strictly dude thing, but I think it is a strictly dude thing. We tend to, if you're a workaholic, ignore all the things or signs or anything that could be like, hey man, you're like, oh, you're overdoing it,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. There was a therapist I was talking to once, and it wasn't my therapist, but it was someone I was talking to, and she does executive therapy, right? So basically, her job, she has a PhD in psychology, and what she does is she works with executives only. So these are like
sure,
really high-powered executives. People have reached kind of the top of their, that pyramid that they were shooting for in their career. And to a person, what's interesting is they thought all the way along the way, I'll be happy when I get there. And right, and so they
yep,
put off their happiness and they put off their self-care. And so when you talk to someone and you're like, okay, you know, that doesn't happen, by the way, right? It doesn't happen when you get to
you
be
never get there.
CEO, right?
Yeah,
You're either happy where you're at or you're not going to be happy where you're going.
yep,
And when you have a partner who is understanding of, like, here's why you're doing it, but it's causing you issues and you're not taking care of you. And
that's phenomenal.
the thing that this therapist told me that was really amazing is if you're a worker, right, and you're someone who believes that work is how you define some part of you, or if it's necessary or whatever, a lot of us are raised to follow orders, and
Yep,
a lot of us are raised to find an authority figure and contribute to a team and all these things. The first thing that goes in your life when that gets really pressing is the thing that relieves the most stress. Think
yep,
about that. And so what happens is you get rid of the hobby first.
yeah,
And so it creates a really, really unhealthy snowball effect. And so I happen to
yeah.
be lucky to have a partner who is like, you can't give up on this and you can't give up on that. And it's like, I just don't feel like it anymore. And once I'm saying I don't feel like it anymore, it's like, listen, you gotta make
Right.
a change. You got to make a
Yeah, I
change.
mean, I had there was a family friend that he was in the Navy for a very long time, retired from the Navy, started working for the post office, worked for the post office for a very long time. He's in his 70s, late 70s, something like that. Anyway, and I remember I was talking to him. This was before I fully retired, so I was working for the video game company, and I thought I was having a blast. Everything was great, and he looked me in the face because he kind of could tell I was stressed. He was like, "Hey, it's the same question. Are you living to work, or are you working to live?"
Yep.
And I was like, just those words like just snapped me out. Like, holy crap! Like, I'm doing the same stuff I was doing when I was in the Navy. Because in the Navy, I was living to work. You literally woke up, went to work, came home, went to bed, get up, go to work. Like nothing else was occurring in life.
Yep.
You
and
know,
that's the pattern. It's on
Yeah.
purpose, right? That's what you're supposed to do, right? And
Yep.
and then at some point you're not in the Navy anymore.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. But these companies, and they're nameless, faceless, soulless beings.
Sure. Yeah.
They're pretty much designed to take as much as you'll give.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And that's the goal a lot of times, and you can't really hate the company for that, right? That's what a company's supposed to do. And so it's got to be your job to say, I'm
Sure.
only willing to give X,
Sure.
and there's times when the company's like, yeah, but I want Y. Well, I'm only willing to give X. Well, it doesn't work out. Great, nothing personal, right?
Yep.
But we're on different wavelengths. The real toxic thing, though, and I'll ask you this, for me, the real interesting thing though is the companies I know are designed to do that. What I really struggle with is the managers who play into it, and they put that expectations on people below them. Where
Is it knowingly?
I don't know always, right? I don't think that answer is always true. And I think
Sure.
what I've always struggled with is if it's knowingly, it's incredibly insidious, right? It's like
Oh, 100%.
you're undermining you knowingly are undermining someone's happiness and well-being. To what end?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
to do what? To create what?
Yeah.
0.003% more of something than you did yesterday or the day before. It'll get created tomorrow anyway.
Sure.
So it's a really interesting world when you're talking about, and I do think we're going to talk about some of this later with companies and stuff, but we're kind of witnessing labor movement 2.0. The kids are all right. Like they have a different attitude than we
Yep.
were kind of raised with. They're saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna make. I know someone who made an overland van, and just drives it all, just gone, right? And
Yes, sir.
that wasn't something you saw necessarily 30 years
Yeah.
ago, where
Yeah.
it was sell out to the company and work your
Yeah.
way up. So yeah, the question that I think from this conversation that I'd love to leave everybody with is ask yourself what Hapa said. Are you living to work, or are you working to live? Because it matters.
It really does. It really does. And I don't mean that just from like a money point of view either. Like it's in every aspect. Mental health, physical health, friendships, etc., etc. Like in every aspect. That's a very important question that people have to ask themselves. Like obviously, if you're not able to pay your bills, that kind of changes things a little bit. But if the line that your dad probably gave you at some point, you're in my house, you got clothes in your back, you got food on the table, those kind of things. Like if those things are happening, you're doing all right, like.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I
it's a good
digress.
segue really into our next subject.
Yeah.
So let's segue right into it. Talking about companies
Sure.
taking advantage of people and treating people, in ways that probably I wouldn't at least treat people. I wouldn't be comfortable doing
Sure.
these things. But one of the subjects we've covered every single podcast we've had is talking about Elon Musk and Twitter.
Yeah, man.
So Elon Musk and Twitter, the latest to catch everybody up. I mean, the guy at some point in the last few months or whatever decided to stop paying the leases. There are people sleeping at
Globally,
the office.
by the way.
Yeah, everywhere. There are people
Yeah.
sleeping at the office. I know the city of San Francisco has actually now said he's going to have to rezone his building as residential, or he's going to have to let people go
Whoa.
home. Like there's so many people sleeping at the office that they're saying you're going to have to take and say these are actually bedrooms, right?
Wow,
It's getting
I didn't
kinda
hear that.
messy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's getting kind of messy in Twitter land. And to avoid talking only about Twitter, you kind of on the end of that said, the ever-changing social media world. And so I had some really interesting thoughts there, but I want to kind of start with you. And
Sure.
as this has gone on, you and I have texted back and forth. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, did you see this? And
Yeah.
and some of it's really gross, but there's I mean, we're talking about at this point 6 months worth of content. So what are your thoughts right now about where Twitter or social media in general is headed? The TikTok news, like there's all this stuff that's been going on.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. We had this discussion in prior episodes. Like, I just believe. Well, first of all, I think it's impossible for the world to unplug at this point. Like, it's almost like it's part of the DNA, which is a sad diatribe about society nowadays. I think. Remove the corporate side of things. Any shady corporate decisions or whatever, I legitimately don't care, because at this point, corporations, like it or leave it, they have no buy-in to people. They don't give a crap about people. Now, when you step into the realm of where you're now possibly harming people, right? I have a problem with that at that point.
Sure.
Do I think Elon buying a company out was good? Yes. Firstly, because I think sometimes boards, quote unquote, need to be put in check. And if there's somebody out there that could say, "Hey man, I could take your toy away in 2 seconds if I want to." Maybe that'd make some of these more greedier board member folks maybe have a second thought before they do some of the stuff they do. Now, you're never going to have a right decision all the time, right? Because some of the stuff I've read about some of the stuff that I've seen go on, case in point at Twitter, I've just been like, there's no way that's true. And then you do a little bit of reading, you're like, oh Jesus, it really is true. Like, yeah. I don't understand how this is happening, because at some point you would think morally some of the decisions that occurred needed to maybe they throw up a light bulb, like maybe I need to rethink that. But at the same time, you've got a company like Twitter that has been we've talked about the tech industry in general. Yep. Has yep. just been like, I feel like they've gotten to critical mass.
Yep.
Like bloated, insane positions that don't need to exist, 35,000 of X position that doesn't need to exist, all these people getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, they shouldn't be getting paid that, like, so on and so on and so forth. And I feel sorry for people that get laid off, but at the same time, if it's putting some of that bloat in check, I'm all for it, you know? And it sounds, you know, I've had people be like, well, what if that was your job? And I said, look, man, I look at it this way. I know I wasn't in corporate America that long, but if you're not constantly updating your own resume and at least just surfing, looking around at what's out there, like if you get comfortable in your position, especially in a tech company or social media outlet, if that's where you work, I feel like you're just doing yourself a disservice, man. Like I just, you know, you should expect at any point your job just doesn't exist. Like, it could happen to you, you know?
It was really interesting to watch occur with these tech companies, right? I was part of, you know, I've been in that world. And
yeah,
it's really interesting when you have someone come in and say, you need to hire 40 people. You need to hire 30 people. And I've been the guy that said, I don't need 30 people. You know, how many do you need? 4? Right? Like, and then
so where do they get that number though? Is it like it's not pulled out of the air?
There's been this okay, and you hear the CEOs talk about it, and they actually tell you what went on. But if you don't know the inside, you don't know that's what they're saying. And they say things like, we grew too fast. You've heard that. How many times have you heard that?
Oh God.
We grew too fast. So what happened was there's been this pervasive mindset in any world of tech companies where VC was involved, of more employees equals more success.
Right.
And what's been interesting to me in the technology world is that is patently untrue.
Sure.
Right, in the world of technology where you automate everything, right, how can you justify right a certain number of people? And that's what we're finding is you can't.
Right.
And a lot of these companies, when you're talking about Twitter, you know, Twitter did layoffs. Facebook's done layoffs. You know, the only company that hasn't is Apple, and that's because Tim Cook took a $50 million dive on his salary, right? Like,
right.
That's a different level of CEO in what we're
Right.
talking about in a lot of
Right.
cases. That's willing to say, actually, I don't want to get anybody.
I don't need to make that much money. Like,
Yeah, and I'm not laying anybody off, right? So
sure.
it's interesting to watch because I think there was I've witnessed a bit of a domino effect, and I find this fascinating because I don't know that I've ever seen it before. It may
Sure.
have happened. I've never heard of it, but when these companies started laying people off, other companies who may not have needed to necessarily lay people off looked around and said, you know what? If we lay people off now, we're just noise. It's a headline for a couple of days.
Ooh.
And we're going to just follow suit. And we're going to lay people. And maybe we need to, maybe we don't. But some of these
Right.
companies are posting record profits at the
Yeah.
same time as laying
Yeah.
off all these people.
Yeah.
And so there's something there that's not jiving, I think.
Do you
that
think it's
I was-
preemptive?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know. I
like we
can't
know
say.
the economy is not doing great, so maybe I'll preempt this just in case.
I can't say, but here's what I can tell you: is I recruited against some of these companies. I recruited people against these companies, and the price tags had gotten insane. Right?
You
When
mean
you're-
salaries?
Salaries. You talk to someone coming fresh out of school, and the kind of numbers they were throwing at you were insane. And you're like, I'm not going to pay that. Not that I can't afford it. It's that
Right.
I'm not going to pay that. And at some point, it turned into, I couldn't afford that if I wanted to.
Right.
And what you find out is you connect with them on LinkedIn or whatever, and then 3 weeks later,
Someone
they're
else.
making that money. So there was no way to justify, I think Zuckerberg is running into that with Facebook. He's like, augmented reality, virtual reality. He's just going down the path on this meta stuff. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. He may be ahead of his time. He may be right on time. The first person to get it is going to be,
Right.
wealth is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they, it's turned into these social media worlds had all these people, and then they started laying people off, and then everybody started laying people off, and now we have a bit of a crisis in the technology world, bit of a crisis with people just not having enough jobs. At the same time, the economy has the lowest unemployment it's had in like ever. So the tech industry is out of step. That's what I would say is the takeaway for me on talking about like social media and these companies is they're out of step. Something's different.
Right. I feel like, and I don't know if this. Okay. Let me. I highly doubt this is something specific to the tech industry, tech world, but I feel like corporations have gotten more and more greedy at the top to the point where a lot of their actions become obviously dubious, but nobody's gonna do anything about it. Like nobody cares. It seems like.
Yeah.
This
is why I think Twitter is so important, and I keep talking about it. Elon Musk is the worst behaved CEO. Right?
Yeah.
If you took them all and lined them up and you said, okay, that dude shot a rhinoceros, right? You go down the list. And there's some pretty, right? You know what I'm like? There's some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And he is by a large margin the most ill-behaved. And
he does it all just because he can. He's like, I can do it.
It's like he's stress testing the system. What are you going to do to me, the FCC? Just I'm going to thumb my nose at you. Who cares what you say?
Yeah.
And the SEC, like I don't even care about the SEC, right? Like he's stress testing the system, and it's going to be interesting to see how it goes because he took I think he's at a $60 billion bath now. He's lost more money than anyone in history.
Do you think he notices that?
I don't think he cares. I mean, not that when you've got that much money, it's not even. Who cares? I'll take 90% of my money. My grandkids will still never work. It's
right.
He was at like $260 billion. What?
And that's what I mean. Is like, first of all, that's a number that is inconceivable. Like I don't know. That means nothing to me.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you get to a certain point where you're literally buying a social media platform, okay, not a company, you bought a platform. That's like buying the West Coast, right? Like,
yeah,
Vancouver, BC to the Mexican border, mine. Like that's essentially
all of Baja.
Yeah. Oh yeah, just throw it in because it's like a 2 for 1.
I'm gonna take some from another country too. Why not?
And that's my thing. It's like, well, is there really anything that you can do to him that he's just not going to be like, whatever, Let
me throw a thought your way on this. All right, and I've never talked about this before, so I'm really curious to see what you think. Let me ask you a series of questions first.
Okay.
What is your favorite alternative to McDonald's?
Alternative to McDonald's. Well, I don't really
Yeah.
eat fast food, but I'd say Burger King.
Sure. What is your favorite alternative to Target?
I don't shop at Target, but I mean, there's no alternative to HEB here, but HEB, I guess.
Cool. Starbucks. What's your favorite
Ooh,
alternative to Starbucks?
I don't drink coffee either.
It's not the point, but yeah, you can,
Seattle's best.
so you can name competitors.
Sure.
Who's Twitter's competitor?
Exactly.
So what you have is these social media companies have monopolized a space.
Yes.
And now they can act in any way they want because they've monopolized a space. And I remember when Elon Musk bought Twitter, and I wasn't really necessarily on the train of people that were like, burn it all down, I'll never use Twitter again just because Elon Musk
Sure.
bought it, right?
Also, that was
the
a bunch of BS. People saying that, by the way.
It was, the guy is woefully underqualified to be running Twitter. He's woefully underqualified to even sit in a room with Twitter's engineers. However, he's doing it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't someone who was just going to bail, right, because he bought Twitter. Now,
Sure.
some of the decisions he's made, the way he's treated people with H-1B1 visas, and some of those things are it's just inexcusable. So, but those aren't represented. Twitter is not that. That is
Correct.
still Elon Musk making those decisions. And so I started looking at, okay, let's say you did want to leave Twitter. Where are you going?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, Mastodon. The what? The what now?
The who?
Look at Mastodon.
Who?
And I go, look at Mastodon. I'm like, no, you're nowhere close. And you did that with if you were looking for an alternative, you did that with like 5 or 6 things.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no alternative. Well,
Yeah.
the way that these companies have gotten this, and you and I talked about this once before, I don't care if it's Google, Facebook, Twitter, they bought the competition and killed it.
Yes.
And this has been allowed to go on for however long at this point.
And supposedly we have antitrust laws.
I promise you, if a cable company did it, right now Kroger
Yeah.
is buying Albertsons.
Yep.
Or trying, and people are
Yep.
like, we can't have one company in control of that much of the supermarket market.
Yes.
And it's like, then how are you letting?
And this
people-
is where you'll draw the line. Like what?
Yeah.
Like
Oh, that's where you drew the line. Grocery stores. All right. What? So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I love that you were able to say, I don't like fast food that much, but here's the alternative. Right? You actually, it worked out better than I thought, because you're like, oh, but here's the alternative. I don't drink coffee, but here's the alternative. Right? Even someone who doesn't really,
you still got alternatives.
you still know
Sure.
what the alternatives are,
Yes,
because they're
yes.
so prevalent.
Yes,
Man,
yes.
I obviously go on a soapbox about.
And
Obviously.
well, the thing to me that really made me angry too was like the fallout side to him buying out Twitter and a lot of his actions, which are just horrible. And people are like, "Well, I'm going to stop using Twitter, or let this thing burn to the ground." Blah blah blah. It's like you still have people that are there that are trying to make the best of a really crap situation, who are very much, they're involved. Like that's their life, and it's the same thing with And you and I talked about the Harry Potter game, recently.
Oh yeah,
Like
Hogwarts Legacy.
you've got people that poured their life and their hearts into a project, and you're just because you don't like the creator of the original, media material, you're like, no, screw this game. I'm not going to look at the game. It's like they may not even be connected. J.K. Rowling may only be getting kickbacks because of the name. That's it. It could have absolutely nothing to do with the story. Like
certainly, and that is my understanding of how that particular game is going. I'll
Yes,
give you another example, right? EA, Electronic Arts, makes games. A lot of games, right? And
Yeah, sure.
Some of my favorite games historically. I'll never forget, a kid. EA Sports, it's in the game.
Yeah,
right?
man.
Like, who doesn't remember this?
Yeah.
And I saw recently EA has gone through, they're shutting down some studios, they're going through some, probably some what could be described as reorganizations and some
Sure.
things. And there's some people that are taking a lot of Schadenfreude, right? They're taking a lot of joy in seeing the company, quote unquote, EA struggle. But again,
Yeah.
that's a nameless, faceless, soulless
Yeah.
entity. What you're
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
doing is taking joy in the suffering of human beings
Yes.
who are employees that go into work every single day at EA,
Sure.
and they try to do their best work, and they've just gotten blasted from their company, and then they go look on Twitter, and it's like they're getting blasted from random
Yep. Yep.
random person on Twitter.
Yeah.
Like, just be a better be a better person.
I mean, I'll tell you, I used to get that working for Wargaming.
I bet you did.
I used to get people would literally ask me, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Like, what are you talking about? Aren't you ashamed of yourself for working for this company? Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, I play the game, I show the game off, I answer questions about the game. What do I have to be ashamed of? Like, it's not like I'm in Nazi Germany freaking pushing propaganda, bro. Like, it's a video game. Calm down. And there was a period of time, there was like a month or something like that, where I was getting slammed on. I shut down social media. Like, I was like not on social media. Discord was like very specific channels. Like, it was very mentally draining, the poo being thrown at you. And I don't understand why people don't. Maybe they're incapable of thinking that there's another person there. I don't know. I don't know the psychology behind it, but I don't understand it. There, if you don't like something, then just don't be involved in it. Like,
Sure.
I used to tell people would scream and yell about the old Battlefield games and stuff, and I said, well, if you don't like it, then just don't play it. But
why are you? And you make a good point. There is a contingent of human beings who, and I'll see this playing, let's say, World of Warships, right? Which is how we met. If people listening to the podcast don't know, and that's a game that we play together. And you'll see that as an example. You'll see someone in the chat in the middle of the game how much they hate the game, how much they hate the company that makes the game. And I'm
keyword
like,
during
you're
playing the game.
Why are you torturing yourself? Like, what are you? This is not the flex I think you think it is, right? You're like, you're the one suffering, and you're the only one suffering.
Right.
And it's really fascinating to see, that. I did a bunch of work with historically with Toyota, right? So many years ago, and it would fascinate me when I would get emails from someone who was mad about Toyotas, and talking about they would be off on some tirade about Toyota sponsoring militant groups.
Yep.
And it would be like, what are you talking about? Right? That's not at all. It's in no way. Toyota's a very, very, very careful brand.
Yeah.
They're very careful about what they get mixed up in. They're very, very aware of those things. And it turns out they're mad because people are driving around the Toyota Hilux trucks, and doing whatever they're doing.
Right.
And you're like, you're hating on a company because of decisions that were made.
Yeah. By an individual
Way outside the company, right?
Yep.
And it's always been fascinating to me how people will they want to generalize, they want to say something like, this company sucks, and they just lose sight of what it's what's in that company until it's their company. And
Yeah.
I've known people like that who ended up in a company and they got a bunch of hate, and it's like, yeah, this is how that works. And so next time, if you've been through it, the next time you're like, I gotta hate on it, man. There's people working there, they're probably good people.
And I don't know. And that goes back. Like, I mean, you hear me utter it a million times about being a better human. Like, just be better to each other. I don't understand the necessity to sling poo. When it's not. That energy could be used better elsewhere. Like,
and we'll put a bow on this one with what you just said, right? To go back to what we originally said about Elon Musk buying Twitter. I don't care that Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter. I don't. He wants to buy it. He wants to buy it. $44 billion, however, you immediately have to question. If I was sitting on $44 billion, I could do some things in the world. And I don't think buying Twitter was it. If it was.
Oh yeah.
So when you're talking about people taking their resources and misappropriating them, right? Everyone has responsibility for that. It doesn't matter if you're Elon Musk on $44 billion, which is like the biggest example, or if you're some person playing a video game and being a jerk to everyone else in the video game. You are using your energy for something in the world that doesn't build others up.
You don't need to be doing it.
Right. And you could make the choice to spend the same amount of energy to help the world be a better place. You could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, so Hapa, we got the next subject. We kind of covered two there, right? And
Yeah.
we can come back to it. The two subject headlines for anyone who's listening, we were going to talk about Twitter and Elon, the social media world, but we also wanted to talk a little bit about the economy and how companies are handling it. We kind of rolled those in together. But I know there's a segue in you were talking about, and we're going to have a section. I think we're going to try to do this every time because I love it. But what you watching, Hapa? Right? What is it that Hapa
We need to get like a jingle.
Oh yeah, what you watching, Hapa? Like, what could it be? You know, like, I should do that. I should write that and do that. But yeah, so what are you watching? I love to hear what you're watching. I love to hear, you know, some. You always give me some like discovery that I haven't seen. So what you been watching, man?
So there's two things I want to talk about. Okay, one, you know, I have a love for Anthony Bourdain. I think we've talked about that a million times. I met the man a couple times. Like, he's the only person I was ever starstruck. Not when I first met him, okay? Because when I first met him, I didn't really know how to handle it. Just somebody on TV, and just cool dude. He sat down, he bought a beer. Me and him bullshit for like an hour before we caught our flights. I was starstruck when 2 years later, I'm sitting at a bar in San Diego airport, tap on the shoulder, and there is Tony, who, that's what he told me to call him, Tony, standing there. Mind if I sit down? And then he called me out by my name, and I was like, what? Like, how you meet a million people? Like, how is this, you know? And he was like, I never forget people I share a drink with when I'm, you know, chatting, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I digress.
That's really cool.
Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix.
Somebody Feed Phil?
Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix.
All right.
He is super corny, but his name is Philip Rosenthal. And he pretty much picks up where Anthony Bourdain left off. Traveling the world, meeting people that are real, enjoying food together, seeing the real life out there, and just enjoying it together. Cool. And the reason I love that show is because every single episode, he ends it with, he calls his mom and dad on Skype, and they just have a little conversation together. And it's, you know, the most wholesome thing, in my opinion, is not pretentious at all, very laid back. He, you know, a few people have said he's very corny. He is, but it's whatever. You know, if there's one thing,
authentic, right?
It's real. You know, he loves food. The food he eats is amazing. He's everywhere from Dublin to Marrakesh to whatever. He's all over the world doing this, and that kind of thing to me, like, you know, I personally believe that every single human on the planet should travel. You have to travel. You need to get out of your little town and see how life is lived elsewhere, you know? And it's amazing to me, the thought process of you know, Timmy Smalltown on the politics of a country thousands of miles away when he's never left those 8 blocks of his tiny little town. Like, that to me speaks volumes. And there's moments on that show where I get very nostalgic for that travel idea. Just because, you know, when I was in the Navy, I would hop in a taxi cab and they'd be like, where you want to go? And I'd be like, man, take me where you're going to eat dinner tonight. Yep. I want to take you to dinner. Let's go.
Dude, that is okay. All right, man, we got to talk about this. Okay, so this is not where I thought this was going to go. So every time we go travel, and I told you we went to a bunch of different places this past year, and the reason that we're doing that is the pandemic put 2 years of halt on me showing my kids the world. Life. And I think it's incredibly important for them to be in Brooklyn, right? And to see to see Bronx, right? And and you know, what does Hell's Kitchen look like, right? These are the things. And what is Chicago? What is the Riverwalk? These things matter. Yeah. And it matters less about the space and more about the context of the world, and like you were saying. And so it's crazy to me that there are people out there who want to say, just like you said, like, this is my viewpoints on things. And it's like, your viewpoints are so narrow because your entire world is narrow. Yes. But when I go to a town, we always say, okay, look, I'm gonna own it. We always take an Uber Black. I don't ever use Uber. All right, I always use Uber Black. Okay, so we always are riding in style. Just that's how it's gonna be.
I mean, if you're gonna do it, you know.
well, I got 4 of us. I can excuse it in my head.
Yeah, man.
Usually
Yeah,
it's like
man.
an extra $15 or whatever. But Uber Black, if you've never taken one, Uber Black is professional drivers. And so these people generally have been like limo drivers. We had a
They
guy that was
know.
telling us all these. A guy was like telling us all about he is The Rock's personal driver when The Rock is in that town.
Oh,
And
man.
like, so he's the guy, like they go
Yeah.
the whole entourage. So these are the level of drivers you're talking about.
Yeah.
Every single time I ask the question, I am taking you anywhere you want to go for dinner tonight. Where is it? And it is the most amazing conversation to have with someone. And they all of a sudden become proud of their town.
Yep.
They all of a sudden start telling you about, it's never one place.
Yeah.
You always learn about 3 or 4 places, and then you learn about the ambiance of those places and the food. And it's like, that is really cool. So I'm excited I'm going to go check this out. Somebody.
I'm
feed
telling
Phil.
you, you and your wife are gonna love it. And this is how Phil is. Okay, so this was the difference between the Anthony and Phil that I kind of like Phil a little bit more, because Anthony would go to a place, he'd be talking to the cameraman, or whatever, but he'd be meeting locals. Everywhere Phil goes, he has a producer that's from that town. So Marrakesh, it was a guy born and raised Marrakesh. He's there. He says, "Hey man,
So
come here."
He goes and gets a
get
producer,
in the camera.
and he's like, be part of the crew.
Yes. And then
Gotcha.
and then he asked that guy, "Where do I need to go eat? Where do we need to go?" And sometimes the place you show, you're like, "Oh, Phil, I hope you've had your shots." Kind of.
Yeah.
But the food
That's the
looks
best.
amazing. Like
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah.
And
I think I
and
told
that's
you
what I
about
love. I'm telling you, you and your wife, if you just put that on when you're just pogging around in the kitchen or doing laundry or whatever, like, it is the best show to just sit and listen to, even because his conversations he has with people, like he met a guy in Marrakesh who was the concierge of a hotel. Okay, he was like, "I want to take you to lunch. Where do we need to go?" And the guy's like, "Let's go here." Come to find out, that guy's great uncle was the chef at that restaurant. Never met him before in his life. So it's like, to me, that's pretty cool, man. You just brought people together. Like, that's pretty cool, So
Yeah. I was in one of our favorite memories. We were in New York, and we had gone to. Actually, we had gone. Where have we gone? I forget where we were going, but we were wanted to go to Chinatown that evening, and it ended up being a really long walk in the cold and rain. And
yeah.
we get to Chinatown, and the sun's already gone down. Some of the shops have closed. It's getting kind of late. And you kind of wonder at that moment, because you're only going to be in New York for a certain amount of time, right? Am I going to have time
Sure.
to bring everyone back to Chinatown? And you're like, well, we're going to eat. We ended up, and anyone who's been to this area of Chinatown will absolutely know the place, right? But we ended up not knowing anything about it. We ended up finding some shop. Underneath the shop in the basement was a restaurant. The only way we knew it was there was a little table sitting at the top of some stairs with a menu on it. And you go down, it's cash only. It's open 24/7, and it's in the basement of a building in Chinatown. And there might have been 20 seats in there. That is the best food, the best Chinese food I've ever eaten. And I will tell you, it's one of our favorite memories. And those are the kind of things you can't plan necessarily.
Yep.
And watching people, Anthony Bourdain was fantastic at that. That's the thing that he excelled at, So it's going to be interesting for me to get to watch this, because I've missed that. That's been a gap for me, right, in the world, with someone that goes and and does some of that. So I'm excited that there's someone out there doing it and doing it at a level that Hapa tells me, like, you should watch that.
And I'll tell you, like, if you don't believe me, Netflix has renewed Phil for an unprecedented 7th season.
Oh my God, he's gotten past season 2. He's
Yeah, and that's why I say that, right? Because Netflix is notorious for, we just released 2 seasons of this amazing show that everybody loves. Nah, cancel it.
Yeah, just cancel. We're not even going to finish the story. We're not even going to do a blog post about what it would have been.
Yeah.
They don't even care.
Like, when I saw that, that's actually when I started watching the show. Was I saw something, I think on Twitter or something, and it said an unprecedented 7th season. I was like, 7 seasons? Like, what is this show? And I literally, I'm not kidding you, I binged like 4 seasons right away.
Wow.
Like, just boom, gone. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna check this out then.
He does, I'll be impressed if you don't like it, trust me. Like, legit. So, but that's the first show. And I'm sorry.
That was the first show.
Yeah. Sorry, I digressed a little bit. I won't talk about the
Okay.
second show as much because Seven and I kind of talked about it before we started the podcast. I think this subject may be a whole nother podcast, honestly. The second show is The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's on HBO Max for anyone
That's on
that's
HBO
before
Max,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Based around the game, they've done an amazing job with the source material for majority of the scenes, to the point where there's been mashups where they've done side-by-side comparisons of the scenes, and they've got the language and mannerisms and everything almost identical to game to show. But I like this show for a different reason than probably most do. I am and forever have been and forever will be a person that loves watching and studying the human condition. How people will react, change to situations, whatever the case may be. And The Last of Us, it's only three episodes so far. The fourth is tomorrow at like 8 p.m. I think it releases. But they've done an amazing job of showing how things were and are slowing releasing how things got to where they are. And I'm probably a little bit morbid when I think this way, but I love disaster movies and end of the world movies and zombie movies, because to me, seeing the human aspect of why people are acting the way they do or acted the way they do, whatever, that is very interesting to me. Like, I'm not obviously any kind of expert on any kind of psychology, but like that stuff blows my mind sometimes. And case in point, the last episode that had Nick Offerman in it has gotten, if you look on social media, you'll see every which way people talking about how good and or how bad it was, because it's not a role that Nick Offerman often plays, and I'm not going to go into a spoiler side of the house, but I don't care what nobody says, he hit it out of the park, and I think Nick Offerman in general is an amazing actor that's underappreciated, you know?
Somehow underappreciated.
Yeah. And that episode was just phenomenal. And if you don't tear up in that episode, I feel like you just have a lump of coal for a heart, like in general.
Yeah,
like,
my wife, Mel, my wife, she was like,
yeah,
do we want to watch The Last of Us? And I was like, the answer is yes, but you're going to need to be in the right space.
yeah.
I
There's
told her, I was like, look, you're going to need to be in the right kind of headspace to be watching The Last of Us.
not gonna lie, there's a couple of spots in that show that hold on, I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the video went grainy for a second. I think we're good. There's a couple of scenes in all three episodes that you're kind of like, oh, that's like, that hurts, like, oh, that's so, really sad, really harsh, but very real. Like,
Yeah.
not, and it's not going to spoil anything, but one of the episodes they talk about how the virus started and stuff like that, and there's this doctor they have inspect a sample and blah blah blah, and there's a general there because the country that they're in is kind of militant in that fashion.
Yep.
And the general asks, what can we do? And she dead faced looks him in the eye and goes, bomb it, bomb us, bomb the city with everybody in it, bomb everything.
Yeah.
Just dead faced. And then
Yeah.
she just starts kind of tearing up. She's like, I'd like to go home and be with my family right now. And that's how you know, like, yep, Ish just got real, man. Like,
Yeah. I remember watching The Walking Dead, and so my wife and I had really gotten into zombie movies. We used to be like really into this stuff, and we used to drive around and be like, all right, where would we have a bug out spot? Like, we would do that. It was fun to do, but at the same point, you can fool yourself into thinking it's fairly practical. And this is the conversation we may have, on other podcasts at some point.
Yeah, man.
Like, what does that look like? But on Walking Dead, I remember there being a real turn in the genre, because you start with Night of the Living Dead, right? And that was a social statement, right? And the social statement was, people are walking through life like zombies, and so zombies were invented for that purpose. And you get all the way up to Walking Dead, and zombies have gone through the 28 days later treatment, which is like, track stars on crack. All the way, like it was all the way through these iterations. And the Walking Dead, what was really interesting is that the zombies, right, in the Walking Dead, were not the most dangerous thing, and that was when it got disturbing. And that was what was interesting about that show, is you're watching it, and it starts off season 1, season 2, and it's like, oh, the zombies, and it's like, it's the people, right? It pretty quickly starts turning into the psychology of the people are what's dangerous. The zombies are just these shambling hordes of you figured out how to handle them. They're mindless.
You're fine.
It's the other human beings, and so the psychology of what goes into that makes it a far more compelling, in my opinion, a far more compelling story, and a far more compelling way to talk about it. And I'll give one last example, which was I Am Legend, right? In the original format of I Am Legend was changed because it didn't screen well, but the original format of I Am Legend was there was no one else.
Yep.
There was no one else that was okay. And that was the whole point. I Am Legend, right? What it turns out is Will Smith's character in I Am Legend was the monster. So the entire world had changed, and he had become the monster. He went in what was their nighttime, right? And he grabbed kids, and it was just like he was the monster. And so to me, it's the psychology of how the humans deal with these changes and things. And so I'm excited about The Last of Us. I'm going to tell my wife, I'm going to be like, hey, look.
And that's why I told you, like, honestly,
go with it.
Honestly, that's a subject I don't know that you and I can delve into here, because I really do think like that side of the conversation is legit a whole nother podcast. Like it's.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wrote it down. We'll make sure we get on our list. Maybe the next one.
I mean, I think the episodes they're an hour long, I believe. But I don't know, man. It's
coming fresh to you in March of 2024. Our next podcast. We'll talk about this.
Hopefully 2024.
Yeah, it'll be maybe 2025. You never know with us.
Maybe you never know.
I think that's one I would love to sit down and talk about.
Life comes at you fast, man.
And it's really interesting to talk about, how the world is changing and how you see things like The Last of Us. HBO Max has a hit on their hands, obviously.
Yeah.
And you've got Netflix canceling stuff right after 2 seasons.
Oh.
And you're talking about social media, these tech companies, right? Like the way that these companies are behaving. We're seeing a lot of change in society right now. And we're going to be talking in 20 years. Me and you're going to be sitting down in some bar having a whiskey, and we're going to be talking about what 20 years ago looked like. Yeah, and the world's going to be nearly unrecognizable because my kids are going to be our age, right? And we're going to be the old folks. And so we've made our mess, right? And they're going to have to come behind us and clean it up, just like the generation before us made a mess.
100%.
I'm really curious to see as time goes on and you and I have these conversations, how big of a mess did we really make?
I mean, at the end of the day, and again, this goes back to that episode too, and I try to tell people all day, like when they're like, "Oh, you should vote for this and you should vote for that," blah blah. It's like, look, man, at the end of the day, all you can do is take care of yourself and your own, and I can't worry about the geopolitical implications of our ambassador telling X country that we can't do this, or the billions of dollars that we've promised to X country and X country with absolutely no return on it, because I'm not going to be able to stop that. Like, I don't care what nobody says. I'm not able to stop that, you know? But I can definitely...
in any meaningful way.
Yeah, exactly. But I can definitely handle, hey, should we go and get this product of food for my kid for the next week? Like, that's the scale that you have, unless you're at those political levels. And even at those political levels, you may not have pull, depending on where you're at. So, I don't know. It is what it is. You know?
It is. And so I'm going to throw a new subject at you.
Yeah.
That we didn't talk about. What the hell's up with this balloon?
Oh, I love that you're bringing this up. I love it. I have been, speaking of social media, I have literally...
me perfectly into that. I can't help it. I'm sorry. That segue was too easy.
Hold on. I got to pour more.
But you've got it at your desk.
Well, yeah. I already knew that I was going to have at least 2 glasses, so I was like, all right, I can't be getting up in the middle. And
so you segued. I mean, of all the conversations we're having, and you end up talking about geopolitical implications, and there's literally a balloon. If anyone who's unaware, so what we're about to talk about, like, there is a balloon that has been confirmed to be of Chinese origin It has now drifted all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean across the United States of America. It has been observed that it got shot down today, right? So some F-22s. I think this might be the first confirmed F-22 kills.
It is.
Shot a Sidewinder, missile. Sidewinder's a rocket missile. Sidewinder rocket.
Yeah.
Is it guided?
Missile.
Anyway.
It's a guided missile.
It's guided missile. Okay, it is guided.
Yep.
So shot a Sidewinder missile through this stupid balloon, and it's like, through the air, falling into the Atlantic Ocean.
I was like, we couldn't have floated a hot air balloon with a guy with a stick with a pin on the end and just been like. We had to use billion-dollar technology to take out a whatever. Anyway.
Oh yeah, there was some fighter pilot got this call, right? And it was like,
I gotta do what?
It's like, and it's like, sir, what did you say? Balloon. It's like, he looks over at his wingman. He's like, sir, did you just say balloon?
Hey, Mark, did we hear that correctly? Yeah.
I'm driving a $180 million airplane, sir. Are you sure about this?
I'm about to spend taxpayers' money, like millions of taxpayers' dollars, to take out a balloon. Anyway,
a balloon that is now floated across the entire country.
First of all, have you read any of the social media comments about this? Like people's thoughts?
I have, and probably the funniest to me is the dummies, the pistols.
God.
I'm like, you went outside with a pistol and wasted whatever, $3 in ammo.
You possibly killing little Timmy freaking a block or two away.
3 blocks away. But yeah, no, I've read.
Those are my people, man. Those are my country folk right there. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, hey, so I have read some stuff. People have, I've seen people saying, "Oh, it's spycraft," which seems really odd, right? I think that China has
it's possible though
to satellites and everything else, but it does seem right. If it is, it's very obvious. Like it's a message sending form of that. And I think China has said maybe it's a privately owned weather balloon because there's another one right in South America. And there's like a privately owned weather balloon of some sort that's been floating across the country. So yeah, what have you seen?
So, I mean, most of it is the folks with tinfoil wrapped around their skulls that are screaming that it's full of whatever disease or full of whatever chemical or all that crap. But the thing that blew me away the most, and this is like the level of ignorance in general, I suppose, maybe I shouldn't say ignorance because, well, it is ignorance. You don't know. Ignorance is you don't know, right? I being in the military and having worked on platforms that were air defense platforms, so literally radars that had hundreds of miles of range, hundreds of thousands of feet of range, being able to see things, I will tell you right now, one of the comments that really made me laugh, and I actually typed out a response, was like, thought better of it because I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, because the guy was like, how in the hell did our military allow something like this to travel across the United States? And it's like, let me tell you something, Jimbo. The moment that thing left the ground, I would not be impressed if somebody in the Pentagon got a memo. Hey, this has left the ground in Jiangxi province, blah 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 blah. It's heading to this altitude, and we expect it to cross here into the United States, possibly at this time, like literally. And this would have been days in advance. They knew, and they'd been tracking it, And I promise you, the problem is. For those of you that don't know, the U.S. military is probably the only military that follows any kind of rules of engagement that is very reactive versus proactive, right? Like, I know for a fact there's countries like India, they'll shoot again and shoot a third time before asking a question. Like, that's just how they are. Sure. Which I don't necessarily disagree with, but at the same time, if you're going to be the police of the world, you kind of need to be more reactive.
It's a difference in doctrine, right? It's
correct. So it cracks me up that people think that the military wasn't acting or didn't know it was there or whatever. That's the first thing. The second thing is there was an Air Force general that he gave a speech, and I think the words from the reporter were does the public not have a need to know, or are you guys just hiding this? And I think his response was somewhere in the realm of, if it was important, we would have told you. And that response was not okay with the public. Like, the public was not okay with, you're automatically there's UFOs at Area 51 and we've got a treaty, and like like all this stuff is coming out of the woodwork now. Like,
there's a really easy way. If you're someone who wants to know that sort of stuff, there's a really easy way, or a simple way. I won't say easy, but a really simple way to be the person who knows about it. Be the guy, be the general that's speaking on it.
Wow!
You,
wow!
Right? It's just like, okay, it goes back to, we were talking about companies earlier, and people want to say, here's how companies should act. If you want to change it, go. They probably have job openings posted on their website. Go get one. But yeah, the balloon thing has been crazy to me because of the speculation. People are they feel that they are entitled to
100%.
That they
100%.
You owe me this information. Man, I don't owe you nothing. And I promise you, the Jim Bob Magoo that was out hanging out, laying on his back, passed out in Montana, wasn't the first person to see this thing.
Right.
He was just the first person to tell you guys about it.
There was literally, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to tell you as 99% positive fact, that there's a specific class of ship that the United States Navy has. This is public knowledge, so it's not a big deal. They're called ballistic missile defense ships. They're literally built with radars that they track satellites. Okay?
Yeah.
That's how high the radar goes. There are these ballistic missile defense ships off the coast of China at all times. And if anything leaves 12 nautical miles from anywhere out there, 12 nautical miles, for those of you who don't know, is the territorial known limits by the world. No, China doesn't go by them because they're China, but the world recognizes 12 nautical miles.
Meaning anything outside of 12 nautical miles is international water.
Correct. And the moment something crosses that, they're like, okay, we're following it. And I promise you, they were following it from the second it crossed all the way across. And people were like, one of the things that I think is funny too is because, like you mentioned, like people shooting their guns and whatever. Why didn't they shoot it down sooner? Well, if it's over Seattle and we freaking blow this balloon up, guess where the debris is going to go? Like,
yep.
Montana was the perfect place to do it because worst case, cow number 454 might get hit,
we lose one area code. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to miss it? Like, really?
I'm not hating on Montana.
Yeah,
but
it
is funny. It is funny because there's so little, from a population density standpoint, Montana is, I think, the least dense, but there's a very large area. They let it go all the way, I think, to North Carolina, or South Carolina, and then shot it down in Atlantic. Is that how that went?
Yeah. I mean, the problem you run into too is if it's a balloon at the altitudes I'm thinking, when they get in the jet stream, even a balloon is hauling, like it's moving.
Yeah, they said the original thing I saw is it was far above commercial airline altitudes, which is 40,000. I think they even go up to 40. It's 40,000.
40 is like the upper limit typically.
Right, but it's 20,000 is usually like the cruising limit you're going to have on these normal airplanes. So this thing had to be up at 45, 50, 60,000. There you go. Sin Style saying in chat here.
Okay, yeah.
With 60,000 feet moving at 25 miles an hour. Yeah, there you go.
And the thing that people need to think of is like the best idea that they could have done is like they just kept track of it, and they knew by the jet stream where it was going to go, and they knew by the jet stream if we blew the balloon up here, its debris may end up here, and that was like the best thing that they could do. I mean, honestly, think about the PR nightmare if even it landed on a flock of sheep. Like, come on, man.
I think that, I'm going to be honest, man. I think we're handling this pretty well. Because I can't imagine if an American balloon floated across Beijing.
Oh, you're done. It would be on every media outlet. The evil American empire and all this other stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely an act of war, an outright act of aggression, right? It would have been madness.
And the thing that cracks me up is like, do you really think that China needs to float a balloon across the United States to take pictures?
That is what I think is hilariously interesting. People are like, China's attacking. I honestly, it probably is a some sort of weird research project
Yeah.
kind of balloon.
I can believe that.
They've got access to satellites. They've got access.
If it was North Korea, I'd be like, is it a weather balloon though? Is it?
That's about what they've got, though. It'd be like
North Korea's not exactly known for high tech, you know.
it'd be a late 50s Russian tank hanging off of it with a turret pointed down, trying to fire at things. Like that's
They can't aim because every time they fire, they fly like
it's
3
just
miles.
you see that? Just like
But
hanging.
but you got a superpower like China or Russia. Like, look, man,
Yeah, they're
they already
they're
know
tech.
where all of our military installations are. They already know all that. Like, there's not a whole lot of intel gathering that they really need to do at this point. You know.
Sure. Well, I thought
I don't know. You know, I just think it was funny. Like, reading some of the stuff, it's like, you know, you have to fight the urge to keep from white knighting on social media when you're in the know. Because, like, I'm not kidding you. I was off the coast of Madagascar one time, and I saw on our radar a fast mover. And I'm not kidding you. It was at 230,000 feet. Doing like 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm like, what the frick is that? And had people come in and tell me to stop tracking that track. That is not your job. And I was like, Roger that, it's not my job. You know, like moving on. And but I mean, it's like, you know, and that was honestly the radar I was using at the time to see that was a shitty radar. Like, if I'm being honest with you. So if you think for one moment we had no idea that this was out there, like, come on, bro. Come on. Like,
So they said that the thing, if you've seen pictures of it, the thing below it,
Yeah.
the black parts, was about 3 school buses long. They said, which gives you kind of an
Okay.
idea of the size of the thing.
yeah.
Right?
Oh, those balloons aren't tiny. If they're going up that high,
Yeah.
they're not tiny.
They're
No.
enormous, right? So
Yes.
even visually, you're not going to miss it, right?
Oh, yeah.
The radar cross section, the radar cross section of this thing has to be it's 3
Enormous.
school buses.
They're like a giant blob. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Like fighter jets are not big.
No.
Right, in comparison, like the
Yeah.
fighter jets, and so yeah, it cracks me up watching people talk about it. And if social media, you know, all the way back to what we're talking about with social media, if social media has brought me anything in the world, it's a constant stream of
Right.
ridiculousness to laugh at.
Right. And I knew there was a couple of places. It's like, you know, there was a guy that was like, why don't you have a press release where you break it down and explain exactly. Here's the thing. If I'm the Pentagon, like, I could build death by PowerPoint for an hour and a half showing you everything that literally we know, and you're still going to be like, there's aliens in the balloon. Like, you know, like, it's just not going to add up no matter what. Like,
Yeah, can you imagine being like one of the PR people,
I
one of
would
those
never want to
spokespeople
do
at
that.
the Pentagon, and being like,
Nope.
I'm gonna have to talk to these people about a balloon. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me right now?
But
Because
these are
you
the
know
same
what they're gonna
folks
say.
that report on, you know, Iran blocking our transit through the Straits of Hormuz, which has literally been going on for 40 years, or China
Yep.
blocking our way when we're traveling in South China Sea, or Russia, like all this stuff has literally been going on for 40 or 50 years. It's nothing new. But when CNN or MSPN or ESPN, that's not the right outlet.
MSPN. Let me go register the domain really quick.
Any news outlet out there has nothing specific going on that week, they're going to report that, and everyone thinks it's a big deal. And it really is not. Like, it's, you know,
Yeah, and
it's
Rita-
probably a
Rita
good
points
thing
out-
if you've seen that.
or if they just need to go to the wharf
Yeah.
wharves.
Fair.
Which if people don't know, I think it was what F-35 or there was
Yeah.
there was some blueprints that were leaked again, and this is not the first time on the War Thunder forums of
Surprise!
all places. Right, like
Yeah.
all the places, it's like, yeah, we're gonna put this on the War Thunder forums. So yeah, so
Why don't they
the
have
Chinese-
this?
The Chinese spy balloon has now found its demise. The United States military has said, "Hey, we're collecting what was part of it. We're going to learn as much as we can."
You know
from
what's
that."
funny? That's really cool, and you can see this on TV, so it's, again, nothing secret, but something like that hits the Atlantic Ocean. We are one of only a couple of nations in the world that have the capability of going down to the deep and getting it, like collecting
Retrieving it.
whatever it is. Like, you know, when you look at, you know, it's an unfortunate travesty, the Kursk, when it blew up.
Yep.
Like, there were people in Langley that knew the Kursk blew up before the Russians ever said anything happened. Like they legitimately knew
Sure,
that there was an
sure.
explosion on a submarine at whatever depth. Like, so like honestly, it was probably the best thing that could happen is shoot it down over the ocean because they know they're gonna go get it and be fine. Like,
Well, to a degree too. I guess it probably. I mean, I have not thought about this until you were just mentioning it, but probably remains more intact in that situation than it would if it
yeah,
landed on in the Rocky Mountains somewhere. Heaven
and
forbid.
we won't know. We won't honestly know. I don't think what the actual outcome maybe is, or maybe they are being truthful and it's really not a big deal. Like,
Yeah, well, we'll get a story, and then we'll have the tinfoil hats. You and I can sell tinfoil hats and get rich.
dude, we could totally make a lot of money doing that.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we are an hour and 21 minutes in now.
Yeah.
So I've really got one more thing that we wanted to talk about. It was really a story I was going to tell.
I'm excited.
So this story happened last Friday, and I'm going to try to tell it in an order that makes sense. But I was at a bar, and I was meeting a bunch of friends at a bar, and it was a brewery, right? So it's a brewery that usually you go to for the outdoor areas, and so you
Sure.
imagine those kinds of breweries, inside gets loud, as you know. When it's cold, because it was cold that night, everyone
yeah.
moved inside, so it
Yeah.
had gotten pretty loud, and they play music, and I'm going to ask you about a song. Do you
Lord.
remember a song called "Never There" by Cake?
Yes, I remember that one.
All right. So, without going into how the song starts, I want to tell you the story.
Okay.
I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to run to the restroom really quick. As I'm going to the restroom, the music that was playing in the bar kind of ends. And I walk in the door, and I walk up to the urinal, and the restroom's quiet. There's no music or anything. There's just chatter. You hear the noises that you would hear in a bar.
Sure.
And I walk up to a urinal, and very loudly from directly behind me and above my head, I hear, "I need your arms around me. I need to feel your touch." And I swear to you, I started, "Get off of me!" Started,
A little
I
panic crept in.
oh my God, right? And if you now ever get a chance, go listen to the beginning of that song. It starts
yeah.
with a dial tone from a
Yes.
phone, which I had forgotten.
Yeah.
And so I was walking into the bathroom, and it was probably going,
Oh,
it's a
you just
dial
didn't
tone.
notice it. Yeah.
And I didn't think about it. And then it's like, "I need your arms around me. I need to feel your touch." And I was like, you want to? I will never.
This
ever,
is
ever,
not
ever,
what you want to hear out of urinal.
No, I will never hear that. That song from now on is gonna trigger me every single time I hear
It's
it.
gonna be like a panic reflex from now
Yep.
on.
Yep. And so anyone who comes to my streams now, there is a exclamation arms. We'll play the beginning of that song, so now
That's
people can trigger me anytime they
amazing.
come to my stream. Yeah.
Never
Yeah, it was
there.
yeah. And it goes, "I need your arms around me. I need to feel your touch." And it's like this snare hit.
Yep.
And so the
Yep.
music started, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I started
Yeah.
looking around, and you're peeing, right? Like I
Oh my
can't run.
gosh.
And so I'm like looking
Did they
around. Like,
maybe
"Does
did
anyone
they just
see me?"
forget to start playing music or
No, it was just the next song. But the
okay,
beginning of the
okay.
song is like
it's
6
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
7
it's quiet
seconds
and then yeah.
of and it's like I thought then I was like, I was washing my hands. Everyone should wash their hands. Like really wash your hands after
Yes.
you use the restroom, by the way.
Yes.
I had a guy the other day. I was at a urinal. He came out of the stall after dropping hand grenades in the stall. Walked right out the door. And I was like, I wish I had looked
Bro.
over my shoulder so I would know
Yeah.
who you were.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I'm not okay
So
with
I'm washing my hands, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to tell Hap about this on the podcast because
Nice.
to me that's some funny stuff.
I would probably, especially if you had a couple beers, it would
I
it
had
would
a couple.
I'd
had
panic a
couple beers.
smidge. Yeah,
Yeah, that
I would
was-
probably
that-
panic a smidge.
Yeah, it was 4 seconds, 5 seconds of absolute unmitigated pain.
horror.
Absolutely. I mean, you see me. I'm not a big dude.
Well, I mean,
I have to get.
I mean,
I'm gonna have to get.
it
clever
wasn't
if I get in a
whispered in
fight.
your ear. I would probably panic if it was whispered, like you heard it right here. Like,
Nah. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who's 6'2" and 255 pounds of pure muscle, and he was
Big
one
boy.
time. Yeah, and he was washing his hair at the Y, and someone went by him, ran their finger along his
oh
back
no,
like that.
no.
Yeah, so I was getting dressed out in the locker area, and he comes out, and he actually grabs me, thinking it was me, and I was like, it wasn't me. But he's like, I was like, it wasn't me, dude. And he said, well, I think that's just worse.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It really is. It really is
I just
worse
think
at that
that's worse.
point.
I
Oh my
agree with you.
god. Oh my god.
So yeah, those
So
moments where you're helpless.
let me ask you something. And the only reason I'm doing that, are you? So we kind of said 2 hours max. Are you okay with going closer to that, or
I'm okay with however long we want to go. Yeah.
what are your thoughts? And this may be a whole nother podcast in itself as well. But what are your thoughts? So, okay, let me backtrack a smidge. I won't go into details. I won't get all sappy and sad. For those of you that don't know, one of the reasons we kind of had a break in the podcast is my mother passed away the past few months. I'm obviously not over it. I probably will never be over it. It is what it is. Life, right? I ask you, I say that because I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on... And by the way, I'm also blindsiding Seven with this topic, so I apologize if it's
This is gonna be
way
fun.
out there. What are your thoughts on ghost spirits and like the afterlife in general? Start
Yeah, we
with
definitely need-
what are your thoughts on ghosts and spirits? Like, do you are they a thing? Do you believe in them? Do you think that's real?
Let me say it this way. I think that we have some romanticized ideas about that. I think that's for sure.
Sure.
I think that we have some over dramatized maybe thoughts on some of those things for certain. But I will tell you, I am a very strong believer that the physical world is not the only thing that exists. And
That's a
so-
perfect answer.
Yeah. So for me, I will tell you, does it manifest in ways that are what you see in movies and all that stuff? I don't know, right? I don't know. I'm not saying it does or saying
Yeah.
it doesn't, but I can tell you from my experience, my personal experience, there are connections between human beings that exist. There are events that occur. There are, ways that like my wife and I can be miles and miles and miles apart.
Yeah.
And think of the same things at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we don't understand. Could it be pheromones? Sure, it could be probably explained a lot of ways, but we don't
Yeah.
have definition for it. And
Sure.
so what I will say is the physical world that we can observe, touch, feel, there is an entire world that exists that is not only that. So that is
Sure.
where I'm at. Now, does that manifest in like ghosts and stuff like that? Dude, I'll tell you, man, it's good stories. Right? And that stuff is if I believe firmly at the end of your life, and this is something I've talked to people about before, and I think I mentioned to you, at the end
Yeah.
of your life, you're nothing more than the stories you had to tell.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about traveling and stuff. Go out and make your
Yeah.
stories. And
Yeah.
I love a good story. And I'll tell you, where I live is known for its ghost stories. That's how you
Oh,
grow up
I
with it.
believe it. Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know how to, I don't know how to quantify it, but I will say I'm open to the possibility that things exist that I don't understand. I am certain that something exists outside the physical world. Probably stuff that we'll never fully understand. We only have enough senses to sense a certain amount of things. And
Yeah,
I believe there's
yeah.
more to the universe than what we sense.
Yeah. I've always said, in my brother and I, one of the positive things about this entire experience with my mom passing away, and it's very weird saying that, but I will say it anyway, is my brother and I have gotten a lot closer. Night and day, by the way. Like, he and I we barely talked on occasion. And we have been talking since then almost daily and everything. But I say that because he and I thought we didn't have a whole lot in common. We have a lot in common in general. But growing up, my house, I will say we're not religious necessarily. We're very spiritual. We're very spiritual. We
Sure,
believe
sure.
that there's more. My mom told me once when I was younger, she believes in reincarnation. I personally believe in reincarnation. That's a whole nother subject or whatever the case may be. My house that I grew up in was built in the early 50s. Dad bought it 1980. Ever since my brother and I were itty bitty, we always thought that place was haunted. More so in the basement. Is one of those things where, like, if you had to go down in the basement and get something, you would very carefully go down there, turn on every single light when you're down there, get whatever you needed, and run back and not turn any light off or shut doors or nothing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of a kid thing. My brother always told stories of things he saw when we were younger, doors opening and closing. He used to see spectral characters and stuff like that at night. And when I started thinking about it, I had saw that stuff too when I was young, but I never really delved into it. Anyway, I say all this because my mom legitimately passed away in that house. So,
Gotcha.
And I've always read stories that said when somebody is nearing that stage in the life, so the end of life, typically this stuff starts to pick up. My uncle Koichi flew in from Japan, and my dad never used to believe in any of that stuff, by the way. So we would tell him this stuff. He's like, whatever, I don't believe you, right? Mom would listen because she believed in that stuff. My uncle Koichi because he was on flipped schedules because he came from Japan to the United States, he would stay up at night. So for like the last few weeks, mom was
Just
alive.
because he was on a different schedule.
Exactly.
He would. Gotcha.
So it's easier for him to stay up at night and help, with her at night, or wake me up if mom needed something or whatever the case may be. We never told him about anything that we ever had experienced. My brother and I had a few conversations where I told him, look, man, because prior to him arriving, I was mom's primary care at night. So I would be up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whatever. And I would tell my brother, look, man, sometimes I would, out of the corner of my eye, see things cross, the dining room, or I would see stuff walk past mom. There was a light between the wall and the bed. There was a light. I would see stuff pass between the light and her, like things like that. And he's like, this house. He's like, it's this house. Like, we know it's the house. I was like, yeah, okay. Nothing malicious, not like poltergeist or whatever. So my uncle Koichi is first thing in the morning. My mom's sleeping. He's sitting there. We're just talking because everybody got up, and he didn't talk to my dad about it because I think he had already tried, and my dad was like, whatever. He leans over to me. He goes, "Hey, is your house haunted?" I was like,
just like matter of factly.
"Yeah." And he said it well in the way the Japanese is, because he's not perfect English. It's easier for him to just be frank, not beat around the bush. And I was like, kind of taken aback, like,
maybe.
What? I was like, what did you see? And he said,
why do you ask?
he said he would usually sit next to my mother at night, and he said I would be reading a book or whatever, sitting there, and I would constantly, he said, from like midnight till 4 or 5 in the morning, constantly seeing things around him, to the point where he actually, this is a very Japanese way of thinking. He was like, I felt like I was in the way, so I actually don't sit next to your mother anymore. I sit in the chair across the living room now because I don't want to impose and be in the way.
Interesting.
And I was like, so then I started telling him all the stories. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna sit over here from now on. Like,
I found a good spot where I'm not in the way.
Yeah, I'm not in the way. I'm not bugging nobody or whatever. But I also tell you that because there's been, my brother and I both have experienced this. Like when we've been down or kind of thinking about mom or whatever, we get a whiff of her cooking.
Yeah.
And let me tell you that, like, that is, I don't want to say humbling or even comforting, because it freaks you out, first of all, when you're like in this room and I'm smelling my mother's cooking randomly.
Right.
I don't know if that's an aurifactor. Is that the word? Aurifactor? Aurifactory?
Olfactory?
Whatever. Response, like your memory just pulls that out of thin air maybe. But man, I tell you what, after that whole experience, like I believed a little bit before, but yeah, 100%
There's a show that Mel and we just binged the first season. Only one season of it. It's called The Devil's Hour. Are you familiar with the show?
I've seen it. I haven't watched it though.
It's on Amazon Prime, and it would be really interesting if you watch it. I'd love to hear your take on some of what that is.
Devil's Hour.
Yeah. I would love to. I'd love to hear what you think about some of that. It's presumptively a woman wakes up every single night at 3:33 a.m.
Which is the Devil's Hour.
Every single night.
Yeah.
Can't explain it.
Yeah.
Sees
Yeah.
things, right, and,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the story builds from that fact. Is
Okay.
this person wakes up every night at 3:33, and it follows her through her kind of trying to discover what this is about, and she's done it for her whole life, her entire remembered life.
Sure.
And it's a very fascinating ride. And so I'd love to, if you watch it, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think
Yeah.
about it.
Totally.
We just
Maybe I'll
finished it
start
last
watching
night.
Okay. Just
Well,
one season
I
though, huh?
said, well, it's not finished. I guess it'll continue, but yeah, we
Oh,
finished
okay.
the first season last night. Yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, it'll continue. Of course, I mean, if they'll go cancel it. Now that I like the
Sure.
show, they'll probably
Sure.
cancel it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be worth watching even if it was just the first season.
Yeah, and I brought that subject up. I didn't mean to like digress so much into the spiritual realm, but I firmly believe, and this is me probably throwing my personal beliefs out there than I typically do, but I firmly believe that the connections that you have here, they continue. Like I truly believe that, and that's why for me it's very important to have that mentality of being a better human. Like I don't feel that I should not be crap to somebody, because who knows, that may be somebody that you need to interact with in another life. That's a very Buddhist thought process
Sure,
in that
it is.
aspect.
It really is. Yep.
And that's why I try to tell people too, like God, I wish I remember the name of the movie right now. I don't remember the name of the movie, but it deals with reincarnation and stuff, and that movie was like really hit home, because I really do believe that you're with these people constantly, throughout
Yeah,
the
that's
millennia or
the spiritual anchors remain.
yeah, and I really
Yeah.
do believe that, because you have those connections. You'll meet somebody, and you totally different walks of life, and somehow you kind of just follow
Sure.
a similar thought process and path. That's just weird to me, Anyway.
Yeah. No, there's the kind of things that you can't really explain. You can form them, and humans have.
Yeah.
Right. We've spent
Yeah.
millennia at this point forming different systems of conversating about those things. And
Sure,
we generally
yeah.
call them things like religions. Right. We say that.
Yeah.
What's a religion? Well, it's a way of talking about a world we don't understand. Right. And
Yeah.
that's really what it boils down to, and they develop separately and independently, and then they fight wars against each other.
Ugh.
And so, but it's really interesting, because I think that you could travel the world, like we were talking about, and you can learn different things from folks. And I've done a bit of this, not as much as I probably would have liked to have done,
Sure.
but travel the world and just hear what people believe. Right? What do you believe to be true? Right? And it doesn't matter what I believe to be true.
Yeah.
Right, it's about the shared experience. You
Yeah.
can believe something different than what I believe, and that's fine with me. But there's so few people willing to do that these days that the conversations don't happen, right? And I think that we're not on the same evolutionary path that we could have been intellectually.
Yeah.
By saying, what is it you believe, and that's a combination of both what you've experienced and what you were taught. Right?
Yeah.
And what is that? And so yeah, I definitely believe there's a world beyond the physical. How that manifests, I love hearing the stories about. I think it's just fascinating. However that manifests, right? I think
Yeah,
it's just fascinating
yeah.
to learn more about.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that's
For
really
sure,
cool, and I'd
yeah.
love to hear more stories about.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to
the
digress so
house.
much, but
No, like here in Birmingham, dude, we have Alabama. If you ever look, Alabama's got some really well developed, really well known ghost stories. And here in Birmingham, we have a lot. And there's a lot of reasons we have a lot, but there's some pretty interesting ones. And we have a lot of the ghost hunter type folks. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
And if you meet them, and I'll take if I meet someone that's like, oh, I'm into ghost hunting. I actually met a woman, and I was like, what do you do for fun? She's like, I ghost hunt.
It's
and I was
crazy.
like, we're dinner, right? Like we're going. I will be quiet.
Right.
Just tell me all these things, and you will talk to people, and they are 100%, absolutely, without a doubt, convinced that there is, almost to the level of what we see in movies and dramatized. They're convinced
Right.
that world exists and that it can
Yeah.
be somehow observed, and that we're just on the edge of figuring out how to observe it. And I think that stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the subject that to me has been amazing, like knowing, because like animals see it, like they say cats specifically are like the most attuned to it, but like there was times when we were, I was back home where Sam, who never does this, would be in the middle of a room just staring like staring off into nothingness.
You're like,
You know,
you're like, come on, Sam. Come on, Sam.
Yeah.
Very cool.
like she's a
Sam's-
super social
Sam's-
dog. She would never stare at nothing. So I know
She's sitting there
that-
thinking, watch me mess with him. Watch
Yeah,
me
yeah.
mess with him.
and there's a very good chance the psychology of that dog, you know, is that way. But it kills me to think that, you know, and it's fortunately unfortunate that a lot of people have this outlook of life as a final, like, that's it. When you're gone, you're gone. You know what I mean? Because I just don't believe it. Like, I don't think that's a thing. I think there's more. We just don't
Well, you know,
understand
there's
it necessarily.
I still believe. Look, you can call it whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
but as you kind of hit on the point earlier, I believe in that there's a universal law of reciprocity, right? And you
Sure.
can call that karma if you want to,
Yeah.
but what you
Yeah.
know, people say what goes around comes around, and I don't care if you believe that manifests in some mysterious, you know, between the physical element, or if you just believe it's because I'm a jerk to you, and that's going to come back to me at some point through you
Yeah.
being a jerk to me. I don't care. Right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
result,
yeah.
I mean, the result is actually kind of the same.
Yeah.
And I just am a firm believer. You and I have connected on this many times, right? I'm a firm believer in, like, just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, even if it's
Yep.
the hard thing to do.
Yep.
In fact, about 9 times out of 10, you can look at 2 options and say which one's harder, and just choose the harder one, and it's probably the right one.
It's probably the right one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think not enough people do that. I think not enough people, well, I'd rather go the easy path. It's like, well, except that's probably going to blow up your face, buddy. Like like in the long term, that's probably going to blow up your face, you know? Like
I took the easy path a few times in my life. So I generally
Yeah.
don't take the easy path.
yeah. But I mean,
Wait a minute, I'm a stubborn old
I
dummy,
do
too.
but I also do believe in you reap what you sow. I mean, legit. Like, you
Yep.
reap what you sow. I thoroughly believe that in every facet of life, you know, the work that you put in will be worth it at the end. And that's the thing that's, like, probably going back full circle. I think that is probably the most missed on, maybe I'm starting to sound old, but, like, the current generation. Like, I don't think enough people recognize that, like, you know, the easy way is not necessarily the best way to do things, you know. It really isn't. So
Yep.
but
Sometimes something's only worth something because you earned it.
exactly, yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's why, like, you know, going back to my brother, like, he's even said that he thinks that I did life the hard way by joining the military. And I'm like, bro, no, nah, man. I really do think that the adult life that, like, you had and my brother had, like, y'all actually are adults. I'm still a freaking kid trying to figure out, like, what the hell I'm doing every day. Like,
I'm still a kid out here, man. I don't know what you're talking
yeah.
about.
I mean, physically, my body's like, bro, what did you do that to us for? Like, why? Why did? But I really do honestly believe that, like, I did it. It was easy. Like, it was legitimately easy because it's really hard to get fired from the military. Not gonna lie, you know, like, just saying.
True.
So
That's true. They have a name for it, though. It's a whole special proceeding. You have to earn your way out of the military.
yeah, you really do. You legitimately do. You legitimately do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they call it a discharge for a reason. Like, you know.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
But anyway, so yeah, I feel like we definitely had some topics that we could probably, you know, pontificate. I love that word, by the way. Pontificate
Yeah.
for a couple hours on their own. So
I think so too. I think that we got the whole conversation about. I'd like to continue the conversation about ghosts and
yeah, man.
and you know, that realm. Like, I think that should be a recurring conversation. I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And something we could look up between times and talk more about. You know, I
Totally.
think that's interesting. And then we definitely want to talk about, you know, you kind of posited with The Last of Us. You know, what would the world be like, right, if something occurred like that? And
I definitely would
and then
like
you
to do
wonder-
that for our next one. That, I think
I mean,
that,
you wonder. You know, I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? I was up in Philly, and I was
Sure.
speaking at a conference right before COVID hit, right, 2-3 days before it hit, and people started kind of it was elsewhere, right? It was something
Yeah.
that was happening somewhere
Yep.
else.
Yep.
I think Italy was in a
Yep.
bunch of mess, right? And, China was having some hard times with it. What is
Yep.
this thing? And you had people, oh, I think it's just a cold. And then I had flown to another town, and then I'd flown back, and I was speaking at a conference here in Birmingham. The day, right? It was the day that everybody was like, "This is a real thing, and everybody should go."
Yeah. Yeah.
And the conference was 2 days, and I was speaking on both days. On the first day, packed, people everywhere. On the second day, there might have been 100 people there.
Jesus.
And you have to wonder, when you're talking about diseases and things like that, I think we've taken for granted how well
Totally.
the government has done in keeping these things in check
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah.
But it doesn't care about your borders. It doesn't care about it doesn't care. And we have no natural defense against a lot of these things, right? You can't fight it off. You can't have a handgun. I can't take this baseball bat and stop it, right? You can't do that.
Yeah,
And, I think it's
yeah.
really fascinating. So I'd love to have that conversation future style,
Totally.
on one of the podcasts as well. So, yeah, for sure. But this has been great, dude. This has been
Freaking love
fantastic.
it. Yeah.
I said we weren't going to probably talk about it. We got a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
Super Bowl predictions, right? And
Okay.
this is gonna be hard, because how do you predict between Kansas
You
City and
can't.
Philadelphia? I don't know how you predict. That is going to be a really fun game to watch. I don't watch a ton of football. Not a
Well,
huge NFL fan.
I want to
but
hear
this
what
is gonna be
you.
fun to watch.
What is your? What do you think?
So I've got friends who are really
No.
really big
I
fans
want to
of
know
either-
what do you think?
Yeah. I've got fans, and they're gonna yell at you like, "Oh, it's gonna be my team.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
gonna be my
Yeah,
team.
yeah,
It's my
yeah,
team."
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm looking at it. Oh, Patrick Mahomes, his ankle is suspect. Jalen Hurts, he don't like to lose. That guy was at the University of Alabama. He does not like to lose.
Yes.
And so I'm looking. I think Philly wins. Not gonna lie, I think Philly
Really?
wins. They burn the whole. I think they burn the whole place to the ground the next day.
whole place to the ground.
Yeah,
The
I
whole
think Philly's
city
gonna win.
gone.
Yeah, I mean they're greasing the poles now. I don't know if you saw that. They're like they grease the poles in Philly so people won't climb them.
Get
You know what
ready.
they do? They climb. They figure
Yep.
out how to climb them anyway.
There's another way.
Yep.
I'm-
I think Philly. I think the Kelsey
I-
brothers
I
playing against each other is
am-
going to be cool to keep up with, but I think Philly's going to be.
I would like to say that Kansas City is going to pull it off because I have been a Kansas City fan. But like you said, I admittedly, the last 2 years, I have not been following the NFL. I haven't watched a game in like a year. I'll read on it, but I haven't watched a game. College football for me is like I much rather watch a college football
you?
game.
You like
than I
college
would
football?
NFL, 100%.
Yeah, that
I
seems to
don't-
be a thing here in Alabama as well.
I love a
You
little bit.
May or not,
We bit.
may or may not have heard about it.
There's a couple of spots along the Gulf Coast where there's a couple of
Yeah.
colleges that are just kind of no. but I think you are correct. I think I mean, is it corny to say I feel like they're going to win more because they want it more? It seems like they want it more.
I mean, look, it's not just you and I that would have a hard time with it, right? The opening spread is the Chiefs minus
Yeah.
1.5.
Yeah.
It's that close, right? So this is all I can say is I don't normally make a point to watch the Super Bowl, but I think this year I might actually make a point to watch the Super Bowl.
But okay, wait. Let me backtrack a little bit. The last couple Super Bowls have been up in the air, I feel like, for who's going to win, though.
Yep.
And they've never been an upset or a freaking, oh my God, I didn't see it coming, or, like, I mean, I feel like this year's more of the same, though, in that respect.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I maybe so. Maybe it's just that I'm happy that these are the teams that are there, and it's not.
I would agree with that. It's not
It's
the same
there were
old
some-
New England.
but
And
there were some teams and some players that you expect to see in the Super Bowl. Maybe I'm just happy not to see them there.
you're not wrong.
And some
You're
friends
not
of mine.
wrong.
Look, I got some friends who are really big Chiefs fans and really big Birds fans, right? They're gonna.
I just honestly feel like Philly seems to want it more.
Well, it'll be
in
fun
general.
to watch. I'm excited about it. There's. I hope that no one gets hurt. Let me say it that way. That is one of my biggest problems.
That's
with
hard.
The NFL. Well,
That's
that's one of my
hard.
biggest problems with the NFL, right?
Yeah.
Is they are pretty flippant with player health.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, well,
that's
I
one
mean,
of the
you've got
reasons I
these-
don't watch the product a lot.
That's why I don't like the NFL specifically, is because you've got these dudes that are literal giants many times, pushing their bodies to 150, 200% sometimes, and injuries will occur. And I know a lot of people that will watch these events to see the injuries.
Yeah,
And
they want to see the violence. It's gladiatorial. One of my friends is in the NFL. He plays center, right? And I went to his wedding, and of course, his buddies came to the wedding, both college and pro friends came to the wedding, and there's a bunch of offensive linemen, some defensive linemen.
big boys.
The size of these human beings
Yeah.
is, if you've never been around several of them, it makes you
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like a hobbit.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not a big dude, right?
Yeah.
But this would make normally people you oh, that's a big guy. They would make you feel tiny. And
Yeah.
here's the crazy thing: they don't move like they're big.
No.
They
No,
are.
no.
They are fast. They move quick, and so it's inevitable that these people are gonna hurt each other and all this other stuff. The thing
Even
that
if
really
they never
bothers
have an
me-
injury that occurs on the field over time, just in general, they will
Yeah,
have
break-
injuries.
is going to break your body down.
Yes.
and that's part of every sport, right? NBA, every sport has that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the NFL has some work to do on people targeting hurting each other, right? And then
Yeah.
that sort of thing is what a lot of fans want to see, and that's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about. NHL has the same kind of issue, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm not too into. I get uncomfortable watching that, having been the guy that got knocked
Yeah.
out just quite a few times, right? So, but
Little
yeah, I
flashback
am looking
there.
forward to. I am looking forward to the Super Bowl. I'm looking forward to seeing who wins, and if Philly wins, I'm glad I don't live in Philly.
I mean, if they don't win, I would be glad that they wouldn't live there
my
either.
car get turned upside down or something. Right? Like, I would be the guy that would be like, CNN's out there taking pictures of my car. It's like, dude, can we turn it
Seriously,
over,
that's my
please?
car. Like, what the hell?
That's my car. Can we turn it
I
back
mean,
over?
I suppose we should thank God that we don't have soccer. We don't take soccer as serious as the rest of the globe plays soccer, though, because I mean, when those teams lose, sometimes some of them have accidents.
It gets interesting. The world gets interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
All right, bud. Well,
anyway.
we ran right up at 2 hours.
Yep.
So nice job. Nice time talking to you. This has been
Yeah, man.
fun.
always.
I hope to do this again sooner rather than later. I
The
think,
goal's 2 weeks.
I think 8 months was a long stretch. We'll try to make it shorter than that this next time.
4.
So we'll shoot
4
for
months.
2 weeks.
Oh.
Wait, it was August, right? So August.
Yeah. No, I'm saying we're gonna shoot for 4 weeks. 4
Oh, we're gonna
months.
shoot
this
for
time.
4. Okay, it was 6 months. Right? We'll shoot for 4. But we're actually gonna shoot for
No.
a couple of weeks. Do it
Yeah,
again on we would normally do it on a Thursday night. That was our target this time. We had some weather issues. If you don't know,
Mother Nature, idiot.
Yeah, this guy's in Texas, and if you haven't been keeping up with it, Texas had a cold spell. And in Texas,
We
what
call
that
it a
means
weather
is-
event.
A weather event. And it's funny because people, well, I say funny, it's really interesting. People are very critical of the Texas infrastructure, and they should be, right? There is a lot
Oh,
to be
yeah.
critical of there.
Yeah.
But when you have southern states, especially ones that are biodiverse and subtropical, like where you are and where I'm at,
Yeah.
ice breaks trees, and there's just really no way to guard against things falling on your infrastructure.
Yeah.
And that's what's been happening in Texas. So your power was out on Thursday, and then your power was on
Yep.
on Thursday, and you're like, I think I'm good to go. And then like 5 minutes later, you're like, power's
Never
out
mind.
again.
Never mind.
no.
I'm not good.
So,
I'm not good.
but we're
I
normally
sent you
gonna
a
try to do
video
Thursdays.
of one of the distilleries that I want you and I to go to when you come
Okay.
here locally. They literally filmed and put a video out today that they filmed yesterday of the distillery and tasting room, and you can see how serious it is because the trees throughout the entire place are just split, cracked over, and these aren't small trees, like these are legit
right.
thick oak trees and pecan trees that are just split in half by ice. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. To some degree, I mean, I live in Alabama, right? So I'm used to people saying a lot of, well, let's be honest, pretty nasty things. They think it's funny.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But honestly, if you said those things in other contexts, people would think you're a jerk for saying them.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm used to is people being critical about weather events, right? Tornadoes. Why
Yep.
don't you just move away? Why don't you just have something in your
Yeah.
basement, right? All these other things.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that you're talking about human beings. It's back to the company thing, right? It's important to remember that, look, these are tornadoes. Okay, you can think you know better,
Yep.
wherever you are. You can think
Yep.
you're better and you know better. But the fact remains this tornado killed 7 people tonight, right, or whatever
Yep.
the case may be.
Yep.
And the same thing, right, with Texas, right? People joke and people kind of flippant about the fact that
Yep.
that many people without that much power for that long, that is a real
Yep.
situation, right? And to that end, I would say, you know, kind of as we're wrapping up, be better to each other, right? Take a minute and think, if that was your grandmother or your son or your mom
Yeah,
who
totally.
was in that situation, you wouldn't be joking about it, right? And take care of each other and be understanding of the fact that these are people who are trying to go about their lives, and all of a sudden they don't have
Yep.
power for 2 days, and it's 25 degrees outside. That's
Well, and
not a good
also think
situation.
logically. Think logically. When you're, you know, a lot of people don't look at the fact that the Austin area has literally grown by like I think I'm probably wrong, and I'm probably lowballing, but it's like 1.2 million people in 2 years. The population of Austin has grown by 1.2 million people
Austin
in 2
is like-
years.
Austin is like, yeah, we're going to do studies of Austin at some point in the future.
Oh my
not me and
God.
you, right? But people are going to be studying Austin. for
When
this growth
when
that's
I
happening
moved to
right now.
Austin in 2019, they were telling me 3,500 people a day. 3,500 people a
That's a lot,
day
man.
were moving to Austin. And I try to tell people, if you think for one moment that any utility company is like, we've got a shit ton of people moving to the area, we need to spend the most money on the most high quality infrastructure that we can. Like, really? Come on, bud. Nah.
Yeah.
You know what they're doing? That power line just went down. Okay, now I'll spend the money to make that power line better. Like,
Yeah, now
because
we'll
it's
put
doing
it
the
in the-
job right now. Like, I don't
Right,
need to
now
worry about
we'll
it right
bury
now.
it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that happens everywhere. I'm from Portland,
Sure.
Oregon. Ice storms happen every single year, and people lose power for days there.
Yep.
So, yeah, it really is interesting. Like you said, like people really need to think about stop. It goes back to, I think I've said this on the podcast before. Before you spoke on the loudspeaker on a ship, there was a rule: think, key, speak. Think about what you're gonna say, hit the button so you got some time to marinate, and then say it. And if only social media worked that way.
Oh, if only. Social media. We can end with this. I had this thought early Twitter, very early Twitter. Twitter had first come out, and let me tell you what we were using it for. We were using it for connecting and having chats. And what I mean by a chat is every Tuesday night at 9:00, we would have a chat about the town that I live in, Birmingham,
Oh, sure.
Alabama.
Yeah.
And you had a crew of people who would get on Twitter, and there'd be a subject, and people would respond. We didn't know how to use Twitter yet, right? It wasn't.
See, that's
known.
great though. That's great.
It was amazing, right? It was
Yeah.
this amazing tool. And one of the things I told people when all that was going on, and it started turning into people kind of being nasty to each other. Not that chat, but you started seeing Twitter. It was no longer about your pet or your lunch, right? It was a really innocent, and then it started turning into this weird other thing that has kind of become
To what it is today.
to what it is today. And I
Yeah.
said, right now we have archaeologists, right? And they're digging somewhere, and they're discovering a society that has died. Right now,
Sure.
that is occurring in this planet somewhere right
Sure.
now. That's happening. 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, there will still be archaeologists, and what they're going to
Yeah.
be digging through is going to be information and data. And so, what if they're like, oh my God, social media? What was this thing? This
Oh
Twitter
my
thing?"
God.
And they pull up you,
Yeah.
right? Because what happens every time you see it? Oh, this was, they call him Adam, or this was the exemplary,
Yeah.
the first Homo sapiens. Like this was, they go back and say that, right? What if they pulled you up? Would you want to be a representative with what you say on
Oh
Twitter,
my
what you say on
God.
Facebook, whatever? Are you the representative we
Could
want?
you imagine how that is?
Oh my
Like,
gosh! Can you imagine being the archaeologist? Is like, I'm just gonna put that back. I'm gonna put it
Maybe
back in the
maybe
ground.
maybe that's
Cover
good
it
that
up.
our digital media doesn't survive very long in the ground. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe that helps out. Either way, we should be better to people happy. So I'll let you
Totally.
close out, man. This has been a pleasure.
Well-
Love doing this with you, and I look forward to doing it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and to be fair, if anybody ever has, if you're listening to this out in podcast land or you're watching it on YouTube, please leave a comment or message Seven or I. If you do a search for how we spell our name, Seven's you're gonna come up right away. Mine's Happa_fodder. You'll find all the social media outlets out there. Seven has every outlet, I think, including Facebook, but you don't use Facebook, right?
Correct.
So go check him out on Twitter. It's probably the best way, or leave a comment here on YouTube. I would love to see topics from people that listen to us hey, we'd love to hear your opinions of X, Y, and Z, with the understanding that we are not subject matter experts on pretty much anything that we talk about, probably.
We know very little about very many things.
I like to think that I know what I'm talking about, but I actually really don't.
Yep.
But no, I legitimately would love to hear from the folks that listen to us. We know we've got not a crazy amount of listeners, but there's a dude out in Australia. There's somebody out in Malaysia. There's somebody in mainland Europe. There's Little Miss Portuguese that's there in the UK, and like there's people over the world. We'd love to hear from you and hear what maybe what you'd like to hear us talk about, or an idea, or if you have something that you find interesting, maybe even. I would love to hear about that as well. For me, this was an idea that Seven and I talked about for months, right? Before we even did this. And that's why we keep doing it, even with, real life getting a little crazy for us. I think we're going to not stop. I don't plan to stop. I wouldn't want to stop.
If we have to do it when it's convenient, we'll do it when it's convenient. We enjoy it.
Yeah. And hopefully you guys will be there for the ride with us. But either way, I mean, I've always said, I close out every stream, I think, anywhere where I'm at, or if I'm in other podcasts too, with the same thing, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, laugh, smile, make someone else laugh and smile. And in general, all the toxicity and negativity out there in the world, there's no reason to amplify it. Just be a better human in general. I would rather us be that way and go through life that way than to think that there is another way. That's pretty much it.
Well said.
So, either way, hopefully, who knows? In 2 weeks' time, we will see you guys then. I hope so. And yeah. Any last comments, sir?
No, it's the same thing. There's enough hate in the world. Don't spread it. Spread some love instead. Be that person that if you think of someone, we were talking about spirituality, we were talking about some of these things. If you're sitting there and someone hits your brain, you haven't talked to in a while, hit them up. There's a reason that they hit your brain. Hit them up. Say, how's it going? I was thinking about you. Why was I thinking about you? Because I care about you. Some people just need to hear that, and I gotta be honest, some people have done that for me in the past, and it's changed a lot in my life. So, be that person that would reach out and be willing to do that, willing to take the 5 minutes and do that. And those little kinds of things, if everyone would take that and everyone would do a couple of those, the whole world would become a much better place very quickly.
That's an amazing 3 words, by the way. How are you?
Yep.
That's it. Either way, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Appreciate the hell out of all of y'all. Have a great night.